Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with my friend and associate Alfonzo Rachel, and this is the Virtue Signal, where we talk about the morality and philosophy behind the politics of the day. And Zoe, sometimes you have to give people what they want in order for them to realize it's not what they want. And certainly we're starting to see the signs of this everywhere. People who thought that Joe Biden would bring peace to the Middle East, all of a sudden we see these rocket attacks. People who thought that Joe Biden would eliminate the border crisis, we see unparalleled levels of, just astonishing neglect, and on and on and on and on and on. So it strikes me that this is a really good opportunity for people to start selling the other side of the story. And I think you and I can agree on one thing, and that all the time we've known each other, and that is that conservatives seem to be able to screw up selling conservatism, which is a bit of a mystery to me, given what a compelling and attractive philosophy it is. So I thought during this episode we might think about just talking about a number of different ways, not in depth on any one of them, that we can up our game and kind of sort of improve our communication skills. Got anything come to mind first in terms of reaching people that we haven't been able to reach before?
So right off the top of my head, Bill, the Lord tells us to do this. He say, hey, you might want to use what the children of the age are doing. That stuff seems to work pretty good. The Lord actually instructs us to do that. And he does tell us, it's like, look, man, you guys are going to keep doing this. And you know what? I'm going to end up just letting you have what you want. I will give you over to your desires. I guess there's that old saying of, be careful what you wish for and stuff like that. And people have these ideas of what they want. But when we talk about using what the children of the age are using, we obviously see that the children of the age, in terms of this age, and the thing is, in any age, one thing that sells like really good in any age is selfishness and self-righteousness. Right? Selling the victim mentality, the empowered victim. This has always been, man. This has always been. And when you feel like you're entitled and you think that you've got justice, or you've got these things that you feel like you're entitled to coming to you, you can have God himself as reigning over, and you'll be like, no, we want an earthly king. It's like, are you serious? It's like, no, but that's the way people are. But when people start tapping into what they feel entitled to, or they want to, start comparing or competing with victimhood and stuff like that, hey, man, that stuff sells, right? That stuff is really marketable. But at the same time, these things are easy to tap into, but there are ways to be able to take a vehicle. And one of the things that you definitely want to be able to do is get in the way of people who are doing these things. Look at what they're doing. Look at how they're tapping into these people and emulate that, but for the right reasons. Now, one would say, if this stuff works for God and he's telling us to do that, why didn't it work for him? Why did it work with, in the garden with Adam and Eve? And he had all these good things that he could show them and stuff like that. God's like, look, man, what more do I need to show you? Remember, I'm a just God. My case is airtight. The bottom line is, I know human inclinations. I know what you guys are going to do, but I'm not programming robots here. At some point, this whole thing is going to come to pass, and there will be no excuse for people to see that they have no excuse anymore. But right now, I'm going to have to let you do you. And just like we said earlier, you're going to wish for something, and you're going to wish that you didn't. But in full justice, I got to let you see it.
Well, we'd like to see if we can do something about that before we get to that point, One of the things that made Jordan Peterson so astonishingly popular, it seems to me, was his willingness just to come out and say things that were so simple that I think they just knock people off their perch. I'm obviously paraphrasing entire books and so on, but essentially what he said was, if you're miserable, go out and do some work, lift something, make some physical labor, create something that's your own, go out and do the fundamentals, the basics. And an age where luxury is so ever present and so easily accessible, the luxury of entertainment and free time and all the rest of it, it's difficult to punch through that kind of narcotic haze of just kind of, oh, that's easy and kind of interesting. There's something to be said about this. It's almost like a shot of cold water to the face kind of thing. No, get out there and do some work. If you're really miserable and unhappy, go lift some things. This is essentially one of the reasons I keep coming back to him, why Booker T. Washington insisted on his students working out in the fields to pay for to pay for the school. After a while, after several years, Tuskegee probably could have gotten by without that. But he understood that the act of going out and hoeing some peas and stuff connected people with something other than the head. And that activity somehow seems to be really important to me. Some aspect of it seems to be really on the nose, and it's a really tough thing to sell to people. Like my friend Steve said, 30 years ago, I'm in no condition to exercise, and we have an entire generation that's like that. How do we break away from this siren song of it's not even vice, although there's a lot of vice there, just the ease of constant distraction?
Well, if I may, I want to back up a little bit, and because I don't want to sound pessimistic when I say this, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get in the way of this. We're trying to get ahead of it, and we're trying to do our part to, not watch this whole thing go up in flames. But here's the thing: this is nature, and in nature everything has a shelf life, and in nature things decay. So there's really not much that we can't stop the decay. What we're basically trying to do is slow it down.
Or preserve something to ride through it.
Exactly.
That seems to be the cycle, the remnant, some kind of remnant
right.
of goodness and virtue, yeah.
Which is exactly why the Lord told us to be salt and light. Salt is a preservative, and salt is also that thing that makes things savory. So that's what we're trying to do, Bill. We're trying to make these philosophies, these reasoned perspectives, we're trying to make them savory. We're trying to make them palatable, where people say, hey, I think I can acquire a taste for that. So that's what we're trying to, that's something that the Lord has instructed us to do a long time ago. Be salt and light. Light, be a lamp unto people's feet. Show them the way. Unlike a lot of people who are like trying to say that they're the light, well, they're shining the light in people's eyes and blinding them. So, and now to Jordan Peterson's point, when he's talking about doing work, or even in Booker T. Washington, we got to be careful even when it comes to doing work, because a lot of people, what are they doing these works for? Are they doing works just because they're trying to validate themselves? Are they trying to, find some sort of meaning in life? No, you work to be of service to your neighbor. Right now, don't get me wrong. When you go into work, you want to check. You want to be able to, that's the bottom line. When people go into business or they go to get employed or anything like that, they want to make money. But that's not going to be the fulfillment right there. The Lord didn't say, love the Lord your God with all your heart, might, and strength, and then go and love money. He said, no, love your neighbor as yourself. So when we provide these services to people, we want to do it because we want to provide a service or a product that is a benefit to our neighbor. And the byproduct of that, of course, should be getting paid. That should be like the secondary thing. But you want to be able to have the resources to keep doing what you're doing, of course. But when we stack up these merits for ourselves because we did work, that leads to self-deception, because that's when people start thinking, well, I'm a good person, which means I can get away with doing this and doing this, but don't look at those things that I do. Look at the good things that I do. And there's a lot of that, Bill. And that's one of the reasons why as a culture, we're imploding, because we do have people, Bill, anybody thinks that they're a hard worker. It's a hard sell to tell somebody that they're not a hard worker. What? I do my job. I do this. I do. What are you talking about? What are you writing me up for? What is this and that? Anybody can try to justify themselves. But we have this aversion to this idea of service. We don't want to serve the man. We want to be served. We want to get our cheese and stuff like that. There's a whole lot of that. So even with the idea of just doing work, there has to be something to base that on.
Well, there's a lot. When I say there's a lot, there's really almost an unbelievable, almost infinite amount of influence that one good person can have on scores of lives or hundreds of lives or something like that. For some reason, I hadn't thought about this in a very, very, very long time. But as a boy growing up in Bermuda with a hotel manager dad who was busy quite a lot, I started playing Little League Baseball on the U.S. Navy base in Bermuda. And there was a coach there, a black guy named Coffee. I never did learn his real name. That's all people ever called him. He came over to the house and talked to my parents and stuff. And this guy was that great example of somebody who was both encouraging and disciplined at the same time. You know what I mean? You had to earn the respect and the compliments. He wasn't just a fountain of compliments, because if somebody's complimenting everybody all the time, then a compliment means nothing. It means everybody knows how worthless that is. And at the same time, there are people who never ever give out any kind of praise or anything like this. But this guy, I'm not going to say this guy exactly changed my life, but he certainly had an influence on it. And so if we look at society as it is today and see what we're seeing, I think as I don't want to say it's depressing. I suppose if you really study history, inevitable might be a better word for it. That there's huge masses of people that seem like they're unreachable. But with that said, the power of one person, one member of this remnant, this idea of a person who is usually not famous or influential really in any like traditional way, but somebody who stands there as sort of a beacon and draws all of these lost souls towards him or her, and creates an example for behavior that stays with people their entire lives. I mean, I don't remember last time I thought about Coffee. I know the last time I saw him was probably 55 years ago, something like that. And other Little League coach I had in Key Biscayne as well, a guy named Mr. Kirkwood, same thing. They can't make you go down the path,
right,
but they can show you the path. And people like that are the reason society holds together. And I guess when we look at the magnitude of things out there that need to be done, maybe the answer to this question is be the best example you can be and be available for people when they need you, and understand kind of the multiplying power of the downstream, right? That you never really know how much you're going to touch people's lives. I don't want to go on and on with this, but I will just give you one example flew into my head. Probably 2-3 years after I started writing my blog, I was really kind of unknown for quite a while. And somebody emailed me and said that they were driving down the Blue Ridge Parkway and they saw a sign, a bumper sticker on the back of a truck that said, read eject.com, which was my blog. And the thing that blew my mind about that was I didn't make any bumper stickers. It wasn't like this guy got one of mine. He went to the trouble to go out and make one, put it on his truck, and it connected to somebody who then got it back to me. And I guess that's really the point of this, right? It's like that network of roots, the ribosome that exists underneath the surface, invisible, all of these things connected to everything else. And modern society is severing those connections, and we kind of need to go out and build them back.
Indeed, man. And those first impressions, and see, that's what a lot of the godless and those who are typically on the left, that's what they like to do. They have this campaign of caring. And if you really want to sell something, you got to show that you care. So with liberals, that's what they do. They have this facade of all this compassion that they have, and we need more money for schools. That's where kids start to hear about it. Well, we got to care about the children. We got to care about the next generation and all that sort of stuff. So they make sure that they're there to make that first impression. And that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to be among those who make those impressions, you know, like when they're very young. Those things, and they come through a lot of avenues, whether it's through education, whether it's through entertainment. You know, these are places that, you know, typically conservatives aren't, because conservatives are just trying to make an honest living, right? So while they're trying to make an honest living, you have these people who are trying to get into people's pockets. You know, they've got the time to do that. So, you know, and when we talk about, really quick to your point, of a person, you know, kind of like, you know, always flattering somebody, and the Word of God warns about this, like, be careful of a flattering tongue. A person who's constantly trying to puff up, they're puffed up with themselves, or they're trying to puff up others. And we call that the yeast. You know, the yeast is just, it puffs this thing up, but it's just a bunch of air pockets in there. It's not solid. You know, it's not really something substantial, you know, and the Word wants us to be able to exalt each other, of course, but you got to exalt each other on a solid foundation, and exalt them with solid perspective. You know, iron sharpens iron. See, sometimes even to exalt people, you may have to, like, you know, butt heads with them a little bit, you know, and like I said, and sharpen that iron with other iron, but not for a destructive mean, you know, but to be constructive. So, you know, and even in a culture when we're doing things like that, you know, among, you know, like with this movement that we're trying to do with conservatives, you know, we should be, a lot of times there's a lot of, you know, rivalry, competition and stuff like that. But we should be exalting each other, you know, and building each other up solidly, not just with flattery or, you know, this puff-uppery, if you will.
You know, there's something, as you were talking, I was thinking about this too, because you really led me kind of this. When you talked about people going, like, you know, politicians going into school and saying, we need more money for this school, and look how much I care because I'm trying to raise more money for this school, and raising other people's money against their will and all the rest of it. I think people have develop a pretty fine nose for hypocrisy over the course of their childhood. And it seems to me that the one thing that the people I was thinking about in these examples I just gave, the one thing that these people were willing to spend in abundance was their time. And that, to me, looking back on it, is the critical factor. They were ready to give us their time and their undivided attention. During the times when we would be either playing or practicing, for those 2 hours, we had the full undivided attention of these people, these two men in question, for me and many others. And the fact that they came out there and were spending their time with us is not something I think I was aware of consciously back then, but it was something that I clearly was aware of in general. The fact that, okay, here's this guy, he's the coach and he's a father figure, obviously. And he's taking time to talk to each one of us and work with us individually, work with us together. But there was a sincerity of it that comes with the investment of your time. And really, it's not a big mystery to say that time is everybody's most precious resource, whether they realize it or not. And so many times, especially, it seems more and more every day, our society believes that we can help people by giving them money when what they really need is our time. This is the difference between a welfare check and a helping hand. It's that personal connection. I saw the Mormons have a place I think it's called Welfare Square. Welfare, the whole thing is about this personal touch, about essentially adopting people, not bringing them into your home necessarily, but being responsible for them. That's the word I'm looking for. And I know when conservatives hear things like sharing and stuff, we've had this idea of sharing beaten into us as if the involuntary robbery of our money to be dispersed to people we don't know, so that other people can get credit. We're told that this is sharing. This isn't sharing. This is coercion and bribery, and it's pretty simple. But actual, genuine sharing that comes out of the heart, genuine moments of charity of your time, has an astonishingly strong effect on people. And I don't even think the people who are chosen, who make that time commitment for reasons that they don't even fully understand, I don't think they're aware of just how powerful an influence that is and how it can go on for so long. So maybe the answer is to stop things like political programs or messaging or all the rest of it and just get out there and spend the one thing that we always guard so preciously, and that is our time, because frankly, if the future is not worth some of our time, then we haven't really, you can't really say that we're willing to pay any price. Let's put it that way, I guess.
Indeed, man, and that time is a precious commodity. And but now one would say that you got to be careful of how you spend your time. Like, you might have a mom that might turn into a full-blown Karen at the soccer game and stuff like that, and go out and cause a little bit of embarrassment. So those can leave some lasting impressions too.
Not to split hairs with you here, but my experience has been, and I've seen those kind of parents at various sporting events, both as a child and as an adult. My experience is that those kind of people don't become voluntary unpaid coaches. You know what I mean? They kind of come, and the time that they spent is spent Karenizing. But it's not I can't think of a case where I ever saw anybody who was a genuine volunteer who had that quality about them.
Yeah, and I'm not a big sports fan. I've only seen it a couple of times, and I hope that it happens, very, very infrequently. But I do know that it happens enough to where it leaves an impression. But but to your point though, it's that time to be, to show an example of what it is to be constructive, to show an example of community and stuff like that. And now the Lord Himself, He set lots of examples like this. Unfortunately, though, you have a lot of people who have taken what Jesus taught and lean on Him selectively, take His name in vain, and make it like these things are supposed to become public policy. They're supposed to be instituted. And Jesus is like, no, you don't understand. I didn't tell the government to do it. I told you to do it. I didn't tell you to go make this community property. I told you that this is your property. See, Jesus is one of those kind of people who recognizes your property. This is your property. These are your resources. I encourage you to be generous, because if you're not, you're going to have some people who are going to make you do it. Right. Yep. So, you'll have examples of people like trying to say, well, didn't they pay taxes? Jesus said, yeah, there's a temple tax and there's a state tax. Please understand the difference. Oh, well, didn't they bring money to the feet of the emissaries to spread the wealth? It's like, yeah, they brought money to the feet of the emissaries, not to the feet of the state to redistribute. You guys understand that whole personal,
the personal connection. That's it. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, do this on your own volition. I encourage you in a community, in the community of me, do this. Therefore, that way you don't have the state assuming to be God over me and over you, making you do it, because you'll collapse. You'll never be able to satisfy the state.
There was a book that I've read probably 3 or 4 times now, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's extraordinarily well written. And the reason this book was so important to me, and I've read it through so many times, is because through the skill of this particular writer, he was able to transport me to a place that I thought I might have some idea about, but turns out I didn't at all. And I'm not talking about Narnia, and I'm not talking about Rivendell or Mordor. I'm talking about inner city Baltimore. The book is called The Coroner, and it is the basis for what became The Wire, the TV series The Wire. And even though the book was written in the early 90s, so things have gotten a lot worse since then, this author, whose name escapes me and I really wish it hadn't, is able to show all of the pathologies and all of the dynamics and things like, addicted mothers who again and again and again break their promise to their kids, and kids who, all of this dysfunction. And in the middle of this community is one woman who is running a very small little community resource center. And the things that stick in my mind are things like she would have like a Monopoly game that was missing some, like it didn't have pieces or money or, the deck of cards with like 48 cards in it, that kind of thing. Working on an absolute shoestring. But this guy doesn't pull any punches about the pathology, so I'm going to assume that he's not artificially inflating the good. So you would hear time and time again where these guys who are basically street murderers come to this place, and all of a sudden their demeanor changes because they want to get on the particular basketball team that she's organizing for league play, and so on and so on and so on. This is why they make so many bad movies about people like this. It reminds me of that Bill Burr joke. He said he's seen this movie so many times about some white liberal going into a black neighborhood and changing everything. He says just once he wishes he could see one where they went, well, I went down there and they threw razors at me and you can't help these people. And just, something a little more grounded. But my point is this. Here's this woman who's working on no budget, and she's getting pittance from the city. And nevertheless, because of her personal dedication, everybody's behavior changes once they're inside that building, changes back once they leave. And I guess for me, when I think about what we can physically actually do, in the same sense of microloans, I think that donations to people like this, direct donations to a specific facility or individual who has a track record of having done a lot with a little, is probably the best thing that we can do as society, rather than continue to funnel endless amounts of money into this machine that sprays it out there, some of it, keeps most of it, and sprays the rest of it out there like a lawn sprinkler rather. We should be granting our voluntary resources to the people who are already in place, who've already proven that they care and can get results. And I think if we were to do that, we would be astonished at the changes we would see.
Definitely, and I agree. And to your point about the guy making the movie about the white liberal who goes in and changes everything, we definitely know that that's La La Land, that's movie making and stuff like that. Because the thing that we end up going up against is like, the herd mentality.
Right.
You know, I don't mean to sound condescending when I say that, but when you have a group of people, nobody wants to step out of the herd. You know, if we're talking about the Black community, that herd can turn into sharks, you know, so you can really get, you can get hurt. So, you know, but when you're able to reach these folks one-on-one, and that takes, it does take time. It does take time. It does take funding. It takes resources to be able to do that. Cause a lot of times when you talk to these people one-on-one, you'll watch the light go on. Unfortunately, they end up going back to their environment. You know, so they have this flood of influence that's against them here, you know, and then you've got this little bit of influence right here, and there has to be a balancing out of that. And I think with conservatives, you know, it seems like a lot of they take it as we have to pay this special attention to the Black community. I know there's some who don't feel like that's fair, and it's like I'm trying to tell conservatives it's not about paying, you know, and it's not out of being racist or anything like that. It's just like, look, man, they're capable people, right? When I say, let me preface this by saying this, Bill. I'm not trying to say that conservatives don't care about Black people and just like whatever happens to what happens to them. Where they're coming from is like, look, these are people, all right? They can do fine just by themselves if you would leave them alone. Right? So it's like, why do we have to pay special attention to these able-bodied, able-minded people in contrast to Democrats who think that these people are feeble-minded? Look at their record. That's always what they felt about them. So conservatives like, can we stop coddling them, please, and just let them be people just like anybody else? But unfortunately, though, Bill, just like we said, freedom, peace, joy, prosperity, these things are valuable. So people are always going to try to steal them. And where Democrats are coming from, it's not about paying the special attention to Black people. Democrats are already doing that. Okay. They pay special attention because this is their voter stock and this is their influential tool to do what they do to the rest of the nation. It's about conservatives getting in the way of Democrats. They got to run interference, right? Or they have to obstruct what it is that they're doing because Democrats have a special fetish for Black people and use the plight that they imposed on Black people.
That's it, impose on, yes, exactly.
To influence and get sympathy votes for whatever, it doesn't matter if it's immigration, abortion, same-sex marriage, economic policy, you name it. They use Blacks for that. Conservatives have to get in the way of that.
Yeah, they have to show the flag. And as I've said many times before, when I used to do colleges for speaking events, I'd always thought that going to the college, my mission on that particular day was to give people a fair and reasonable explanation of what conservative principles were. But time and time again, I found out, no, that's not my mission. My mission was just to convince them that I'm a human being that cares about other people, that I'm not just some kind of, hey, you know what, if they can't make it, they can die in a gutter, because that's the perception that has been created about us. Mm-hmm. And you're right. The best way to interdict the Democratic message is to simply show up and just be a good person, because in an age that grows ever more cynical, people's ability to detect BS gets more and more carefully refined. And giving of your time and making the effort is something that people always understand and appreciate. And I guess just to close this, I would say, you have no idea, every one of you listening, you have no idea the influence that you have over other people that you're unaware of. And you can multiply that positive influence in any number of ways. None of us, Zoe or I or anybody else in the conservative movement, think that you should be forced to do this. We think that being forced to take your money and spend it as so-called compassion is the source of all of our problems. But your ability to take your time, you don't have to work with inner city kids either. Just be a beacon. Just a beacon of fundamental goodness and honesty and trustworthiness, and you will light up the darkness far more than any government program or any politician or election or anything else like that. If we are a government of citizens, then the way we save the government is by making better citizens.
Good show, man.
That'll do it for this edition of The Virtue Signal. It's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, people who have stood up and decided to help be a beacon for these kind of messages out into the world. We're very, very grateful to all of them for making this show possible and available for everybody else. So on behalf of my friend Alfonzo Rachel, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next time here on The Virtue Signal.